Hello and welcome. I'm the Rambling Director, and today we're going to be talking about the son of Dracula. The Son of Dracula is a 1943 film. It was directed by Robert Siodmak. I don't care if I pronounced it right. Feel free to have your flame war in the comments about the way I pronounce names. I don't care. It stars Louise Allbritton and Lon Chaney Jr. as Dracula himself. Now, considering it is a Dracula sequel made years later, in an entirely different situation with a cast that has nothing to do with the original, you might be thinking that, again, like with The Invisible Man's revenge or return, you might be thinking coming into this that I'm just gonna bash this film or talk about how, it's nowhere near as good as the original. But in fact, just like The Invisible Man Returns, I actually think this film is a fantastic movie. And yeah, in the sense of it being made later, when we understood a little bit more about sound films and how to make them, yeah, I actually do think it's better than the 1930 classic. I want to mention before we go any further that Evelyn Ankers is in this film as well. I forgot to mention her in the last film she was in that we talked about, and I put it in there as a little side note, but I felt really bad because I really love Evelyn Ankers, and I don't know why, I just completely slipped my mind to mention her. Speaking of Invisible Man connections, this film was produced by Ford Beebe, who you might remember as the director of The Invisible Man's Revenge. I'm going to put up the spoiler section much earlier in this film than I typically would because this film has a massive twist in it that, although some of you probably could have seen coming, the first time I seen it, I certainly did not. It really shocked me the direction they went with it, and I think it is the aspect that makes this such a fantastic movie in terms of the Universal catalog. This film was shot in just over a month. It began production in January and ended in February, but its release date was pushed off, I believe, by about 6 or 7 months. So it was put together very quickly, and you would never ever know that. For those of you who are familiar with the Universal monsters and may be thinking, which version was that? What was the Son of Dracula? Which one was that? I can't remember. Here's how you'll remember. It's the one where Dracula goes by an alias, Count Alucard, which is in fact Dracula spelled backwards. I just love that. I know it's cheesy and stupid, but I just can't help but think it's awesome. Lon Chaney Jr. does a really good job as Dracula. He, of course, is a very naturalistic actor, nowhere near as good as his dad, but I've always had a deep respect and love for Lon Chaney Jr. because he had a lot to battle against. He was really always trying to make his own name, and he never really made anything of himself until he started using his dad's name, because nobody really wanted to see Crichton Chaney in anything. He does a really good job, although when he spoke, I was pretty shocked because I was wondering, is he going to use, what kind of accent's he going to use? But then he starts talking, and he just talks in that patented Lon Chaney Jr. stilted voice with an American accent, and I'm like, okay, sure. I'm like, how mad can you get at it? I mean, he knew he couldn't do the accent, so he just didn't do it. Fair enough. I can respect that. Louise Allbritton is really the person who shines in this movie. Her performance is stellar. She really, she really takes this material, which is already good that she's been given, and she elevates it. We talk about that a lot on this channel. Actors who are so good that they take a good script and they elevate it to a whole nother level. Louise plays Catherine Caldwell, and her dad dies shortly after Count Alucard arrives. And when she arrives, we see that her and her sister get their inheritance, and immediately stuff starts to go in a very strange direction. Now, there is some kerfluffle about the fact that Catherine gets all of the estate, but Claire gets all of the money. There are some interesting family dynamics and politics going on, but it's not really the focus of anything. One thing that immediately tips you off that Louise is going to be Dracula's next victim, or sort of the Mina of this production, or the Lucy of this production, is that she has a really deep, morbid fascination with the occult. and you know that that is the case, but you're not entirely sure what's going to come of it. But everybody is talking about how it's like she's not quite in her right mind because all of this occult stuff is getting to her. And so you think Dracula is going to be able to really easily influence her, and then they go in a wildly different direction with it. You know, let's just put up the spoiler tab and I'll go ahead and get to it. Please, do yourself a favor. Go find this movie, go watch it before you hear the spoilers, because it really is one of those once and it's done sort of things, because once you know the twist, it changes the whole movie. So early on, maybe it's about the halfway mark, but I think it's a little bit before the halfway mark, we realize that Catherine invited Alucard herself. She is aware he's Dracula, she knows it, she has personally invited him there, she's in love with him, and secretly marries him. Frank, her boyfriend, comes in and realizes that they're married, and he's shocked and reviled. Turns out she has used Dracula to obtain immortality and wants to make Frank a vampire too. At one point, Frank even shoots Dracula, and the bullet goes right through him and into Catherine. Now he runs away, and he's terrified, thinking he's killed Catherine, but when they come back, Catherine is totally fine. It's because she is now a vampire, and unlike Lucy, who, you know, there's some debate, you know, how much did she welcome this in? How much was she really responsible for? In the book, there's a little bit of gray area where maybe people are kind of inviting Dracula into their lives, but not really realizing it. No, in this version, Catherine absolutely deliberately goes out and seeks out this trouble. I think that Catherine might be one of the great universal monsters that nobody really knows about. She doesn't really look like she'd fit in well with a catalog, you know, like with all the monsters lined up. She's a little too normal. She doesn't really look that vampirish, but nonetheless, she is like a Shakespearean villain. The things this character does and her motivations for doing them are spectacular. And above all, the ending. Frank realizes there's no other way to save Catherine's soul, and so he takes off his ring and puts it on her left finger, symbolizing how they should have been married had all of this not happened. And then, at the end, they all come in and find Frank has lit her coffin on fire, and they all stand there and watch it burn. So Catherine just dies. Now, in this version, it strangely pulls off something that even the Gary Oldman Dracula, though it tried to do it, I never quite connected the way I wanted to with it. It makes me feel really bad for Dracula, because Count Alucard, he's not really doing anything villainous in this production. I mean, he does a couple things, but like, he's really just there because he's actually in love with Catherine, and she's using him. So when he meets his demise, I feel kind of bad for him. I really think that all aspects of this film are just great. The mystery element of what is going on and what Catherine's exact involvement is. Now, there are some things like Count Alucard being spelled backwards. It's Dracula. Okay, the investigator characters, they catch on really quick. It almost makes you wonder why he didn't go with any other name. And yet, despite that, the mystery element is very good, especially when it comes to Catherine. And although you kind of get immediately, oh, she didn't die, she must be a vampire, the extent to which this character is so manipulative is just, oh, it's delicious. I love this movie. A+. 4 out of 4 stars. I think it might be the first film that I've officially graded in a review as a 4-star movie, but my opinion, I think it's just stellar. And there's one last thing. I gush over the effects in these movies a lot and how great they were for their time, but this film, when we see Dracula turn from a bat to a human, it's totally believable. I mean, it's kind of one of those effects like The Invisible Man that makes you step back and say, wow, like I know how you did it, but it was done so well. Wow! So that's all I got for today, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and I will see you in the next one.